Most people wake up and immediately hand their power away. Before their feet touch the floor, before they choose who they're going to be, they let the world decide for them. Notifications, noise, other people's priorities, and without realizing it, they start the day in reaction instead of intention. That one habit repeated every morning quietly programs the direction of their entire life. Let me slow this down with you for a moment, because this is where real change actually begins, not in some massive breakthrough, not in a perfect plan, but in the first few minutes of your morning. Most people think their day starts when they open their eyes. It doesn't. Your day starts with the very first sentence you say to yourself. And most people never choose that sentence. It just shows up automatically, shaped by old habits, old fears, old disappointments. They wake up and the mind goes straight to problems, what's not done, what could go wrong, what they don't have. And the moment that happens, the nervous system locks into defense mode before life even begins. Here's what you need to understand. Your brain is not searching for truth first thing in the morning. It's searching for direction. It's asking one simple question. What state should I be in today? And whatever words you feed it in those first moments become the command. That's not motivation talk, that's biology. Your nervous system responds to language. Words create pictures. Pictures create emotion. Emotion creates chemistry. And chemistry drives behavior. So if the first thing you say to yourself is, I'm tired, or this is going to be a long day, your body listens. Your posture shifts. Your breathing changes. Your energy drops. And now you're trying to win the day from a losing state. Most people don't realize this, but they are running a script every morning. And that script has been written by repetition, not intention. Nobody sat down and chose it. It just formed. And the problem with an unconscious script is that it runs whether it serves you or not. You can have goals, dreams, ambition, but if the first words you speak each morning put you in a weak emotional state, you spend the rest of the day fighting uphill. You're trying to fix externally what you weakened internally. Think about this. Have you ever noticed how two people can wake up to the same circumstances, same job, same challenges, same responsibilities, and one shows up energized while the other feels crushed? It's not the situation, it's the internal dialogue. One person wakes up and says, let's see what I can make today. The other wakes up and says, here we go again. Same life, completely different experience. And that difference starts with words. Your morning words are like instructions to your identity. They tell you who you are being today, not who you want to be someday, who you are right now. If you say, I'm overwhelmed, your identity for the day becomes someone who reacts. If you say, I'm in control, your body searches for evidence of strength. The brain loves consistency. It will always try to prove your words right. That's why careless language is so dangerous, because once you say it, your mind works overtime to make it true. Now, here's where people get it wrong. They think affirmations are about lying to yourself, standing in front of a mirror saying things you don't believe. That's not what this is. This is about choosing words that direct your focus instead of letting your focus choose your words. You don't say everything is perfect. You say, I will find a way. You don't say, I feel amazing when you don't. You say, I am capable of changing how I feel. Those are commands your nervous system can execute. The morning is powerful because your mind is most open then. The critical filters are down, the subconscious is listening. It's like wet cement. Whatever you step into it with leaves a mark. And most people step into it with stress, urgency, and self-doubt. Then they wonder why confidence feels so hard later in the day. You didn't lose confidence. You never generated it in the first place. Let me ask you something honestly. If someone else spoke to you the way you speak to yourself in the morning, would you let them stay in your life? Most people wouldn't, yet they tolerate it internally every single day. They wake up criticizing themselves, pressuring themselves, reminding themselves of past failures, and then they expect peak performance. That doesn't work in sports. It doesn't work in business, and it doesn't work in life. Your words in the morning should do one thing above all else, put you in a powerful emotional state. Not fake positivity, power, grounded certainty, a sense of direction. Because when you feel certain, you act differently, you make cleaner decisions, you communicate with more authority, you recover faster from setbacks. Certainty doesn't come from circumstances, it comes from internal commands. And morning is when those commands are easiest to install. This is why successful people protect their mornings so fiercely. They don't do it because they have more discipline. They do it because they understand leverage. Change the beginning and you change the trajectory. If the first thing you say is intentional, the rest of the day becomes easier. You're not forcing motivation, you're riding momentum, and Here's the part that really matters. You don't need many words. You need the right ones repeated with emotion. Words that remind you of who you are at your best. Words that anchor you into strength, not pressure, because repetition creates belief. Belief creates identity, and identity drives behavior automatically. You don't have to think about being confident when confidence is who you have told yourself you are every morning. Over time, this compounds. One morning doesn't change your life, but one morning repeated does. Just like a single workout doesn't transform your body, but a pattern does. Your words are reps for your identity. Every morning is a chance to train who you are becoming, and whether you choose your words or not, training is happening. So tomorrow morning, before the world gets a vote, before the noise begins, before the doubts show up, you decide the words, because the words you speak first are the ones that shape everything that follows. Let's take this one step deeper, because once you understand this, you stop waiting for some dramatic moment to finally become the person you want to be. Most people believe identity changes in an instant. They think there's a switch, a breakthrough, a single decision that suddenly makes them confident to simply, Ned, unstoppable. And yes, moments can create momentum, but identity is not built in moments. Identity is built in repetition. What you do once might inspire you. What you do repeatedly defines you. Every human being on this planet is living out a pattern. You didn't wake up one day and decide, this is who I am. You became who you are through repeated thoughts, repeated behaviors, repeated emotional states. The brain is a pattern recognition machine. It looks for what happens often and labels it as me. So if you repeatedly hesitate, your brain doesn't say, you hesitated today. It says, you are someone who hesitates. If you repeatedly push through discomfort, it doesn't say, that was a strong moment. It says, this is who you are. That's why change feels hard. You're not just changing actions. You're challenging an identity that's been reinforced thousands of times. And the brain hates inconsistency. It would rather keep a familiar identity, even if it's painful, than adopt an unfamiliar one that feels uncertain. That's why people sabotage progress. They start acting in ways that don't match who they believe they are, and the nervous system panics. It pulls them back to what's familiar. This is where repetition becomes your greatest ally instead of your enemy, because identity doesn't require intensity. It requires consistency. You don't need to feel fired up every day. You need to show up the same way even when you don't feel like it. One powerful declaration, whoa, didn't rewire your identity, but a simple declaration repeated every morning with emotion will. Think about how children learn who they are. They don't analyze themselves. They absorb feedback. They hear the same messages over and over. You're smart. You're clumsy. You're the quiet one. You're difficult. And eventually those words turn into self-definition. Adults aren't any different. We just pretend we're immune. The difference is now you are both the speaker and the listener. And what you say to yourself repeatedly becomes law. This is why the words you choose every morning matter so much. You're not trying to hype yourself up. You're casting votes for the identity you're becoming. Every repetition is a vote. One vote doesn't decide the election, but over time the outcome becomes inevitable. You say, I keep my promises to myself. Once it feels awkward. You say it for 30 days and suddenly your behavior starts aligning without effort. Not because you forced it, but because your brain is trying to stay consistent with who you believe you are. Most people are unconsciously repeating the wrong identity. They wake up and say, I'm not a morning person. I always mess things up. I'm just not disciplined. They think they're being honest. But honesty without awareness is just programming, and the brain doesn't argue with repetition, it obeys it. Say something often enough, and the nervous system organizes around it. Here's the good news. The same mechanism that locked in your old identity is the mechanism that can build a new one. You don't have to fight yourself. You don't have to tear down who you are. You simply start feeding the brain a different pattern. And patterns don't need to be dramatic. They need to be reliable. This is where people quit too early. They try something new for a few days, don't feel different, and assume it's not working. But identity doesn't announce its arrival. It sneaks up on you. One day you realize you handled stress differently. One day you notice you didn't quit where you usually would have. One day someone comments, you've changed. And you didn't change because of one big decision. You changed because you practiced being someone new until it felt normal. Repetition also removes the need for willpower. When something becomes part of your identity, it stops feeling like effort. A disciplined person doesn't fight to be disciplined. That's just who they are. A confident person doesn't search for confidence. They default to it. And that default was built, not gifted. Your morning declarations are not about convincing your mind in one day. They're about familiarizing your nervous system with a new version of you. At first it feels foreign. That's okay. Foreign doesn't mean false. It means new. And the brain only accepts new things through repetition. The first time you say it, it's a thought. The 100th time, it's a belief. The 1,000th time, it's an identity. And here's something most people miss. You are already using repetition every day. The question is not whether repetition is shaping you. The question is whether you are shaping repetition. Your habits, your language, your reactions, your self-talk are reinforcing an identity whether you like it or not. So the real shift is moving from unconscious repetition to intentional repetition. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your identity. If your identity says, I quit when it's uncomfortable, your goals won't survive pressure. If your identity says, I figure things out, obstacles become fuel. And identity is not decided by what you want. It's decided by what you repeat. This is why saying the right things every morning matters more than waiting to feel ready. Readiness comes from familiarity. Familiarity comes from repetition. And repetition is something you control, starting now. You don't become a new person in a day. You become a new person one repeated decision at a time. Now let's talk about something that's quietly running your entire life, whether you're aware of it or not, and that's your focus. Because what you focus on is not just what you see, it's what you feel, and what you feel becomes the fuel for every decision you make. Most people think emotions just happen to them. They think stress shows up because of deadlines, fear shows up because of uncertainty, confidence shows up when things go well. But emotion doesn't start with events. Emotion starts with focus. And focus is something you are choosing, even when you don't realize you are. Your brain is a deletion device. At every moment, it is filtering out most of reality so you can function. There is too much information coming at you for your mind to process it all, so it deletes, distorts, and generalizes based on what you consistently focus on. That means two people can be standing in the same room, living the same moment, and having completely different emotional experiences. One sees opportunity, the other sees threat. One feels grateful, the other feels frustrated, same environment, different focus. Here's where this becomes dangerous or powerful depending on how you use it. Whatever you focus on, your brain starts to amplify. Focus on what's missing, and lack feels enormous. Focus on what's working, and momentum starts to build. Focus on what could go wrong, and fear feels logical. Focus on what you can control, and confidence starts to grow. Your emotions are not reactions to life. They are responses to where your attention lives. Most people wake up and immediately focus on problems, the to-do list, the pressure, the uncertainty. And the moment they do, their emotional state drops. Then they try to fix that emotional state by changing circumstances. They think, once this problem is solved, I'll feel better. But by then, they've trained their mind to look for problems as a default. So even when one problem disappears, another one takes its place. That's not bad luck. That's trained focus. The reason morning words matter so much is because words direct focus. When you say something, your brain searches for evidence. Say, today is going to be overwhelming. And your mind starts scanning for reasons you're right. Every delay feels heavier. Every inconvenience feels personal. Your body tightens, your breathing shortens. You didn't just describe your day, you programmed your emotional response to it. But if you say, today I'm going to focus on progress, your brain looks for wins, small ones, unexpected ones, and those wins change how you feel. You walk differently, you speak differently, you make better decisions, same day, same challenges, completely different experience. That's the power of directed focus. Emotion follows focus every time. You cannot feel grateful and focused on what's missing at the same time. You cannot feel confident while obsessing over everything that could go wrong. You cannot feel energized while mentally rehearsing failure. Your emotional state is a reflection of where your attention is pointed. And here's the part that most people don't like to hear but need to. You are training your focus all day long. Every time you dwell on something negative, every time you replay a mistake, every time you imagine worst-case scenarios, you're strengthening that neural pathway. The brain doesn't care if the focus helps you. It cares if it's familiar, and whatever is familiar becomes automatic. This is why stress feels like it just shows up. It doesn't. It's the result of practiced focus. The good news is the same mechanism works in your favor when you use it intentionally. You don't eliminate negative thoughts by fighting them. You replace them by choosing a more powerful focus. Focus that creates resourceful emotions. Think about times in your life when you felt strong, capable, alive. What were you focused on then? Possibility, growth, meaning, contribution. Now think about times when you felt stuck or drained. You were focused on limitation, comparison, past mistakes, future fears. The emotion didn't come first. The focus did. This is why discipline of focus is more important than discipline of action. You can force yourself to do something for a while, but if your focus stays on pain, resistance, and sacrifice, you'll burn out. If your focus shifts to purpose, progress, and growth, action becomes easier. Your emotions start supporting you instead of fighting you. Your morning declaration should always guide your focus, not to ignore reality, but to choose the most empowering part of it. Life will always give you reasons to feel stressed. It will also always give you reasons to feel strong. The difference is what you train your mind to look for. And once you understand this, you stop asking, why do I feel this way? And start asking, what am I focused on right now? That question alone puts you back in control. Because you may not control everything that happens to you, but you always control where your attention goes. When you consistently focus on growth, solutions, and meaning, your emotional baseline changes. You become more resilient, you recover faster, you stop getting knocked down by small things, not because life got easier, but because your focus got stronger. So if you want to change how you feel, don't start by chasing emotions, start by directing focus. Because wherever your focus goes, your energy flows. Let me clear up one of the biggest misunderstandings people have about change, because this single misunderstanding is why so many people start strong and then slowly fade back into old patterns. Most people think they need motivation. They're waiting to feel excited, pumped, driven, inspired. They say, once I feel motivated, I'll take action. But motivation is unreliable. It shows up when it wants to and disappears when you need it most. If motivation were enough, everyone would already be living their best life. What actually drives lasting change is not motivation. It's meaning. Human beings will do almost anything when something matters deeply enough. You don't need motivation to protect someone you love. You don't need motivation to escape pain. You don't need motivation to stand up when something hits your core values. In those moments, action feels automatic. Effort disappears, resistance fades. Why? Because meaning creates energy. Meaning creates leverage. Meaning tells your nervous system, this matters. This is who I am. Most people are trying to build discipline on top of empty reasons. They want to wake up early, work harder, stay consistent, but the reason behind it is vague. I should. I have to. It would be nice. And those reasons collapse the moment discomfort shows up. But when your reason is connected to identity, to values, to something bigger than temporary comfort, your behavior changes without negotiation. Think about this. Have you ever noticed how people can endure incredible pain when there's meaning attached to it? Long hours, physical exhaustion, emotional strain. Yet the same people can't tolerate mild discomfort when the reason feels hollow. That's not weakness. That's human design. The brain is constantly evaluating whether something is worth the cost. When the meaning is weak, the cost feels unbearable. When the meaning is strong, the cost feels irrelevant. This is why morning declarations are not just words. They are reminders of why you do what you do. They reconnect you to meaning before the world distracts you with urgency. Without meaning, your goals feel heavy. With meaning, your goals feel necessary. Most people wake up focused on tasks, not purpose. They think about what they have to do instead of why they do it. And when you live at the level of tasks, burnout is inevitable. Tasks drain you, meaning fuels you. Tasks feel endless, meaning gives direction. You don't need to love every task. You need to love what the task represents. This is where so many people sabotage themselves. They chase surface level goals, more money, more success, more recognition, but they never connect those goals to what they truly value. So when progress slows or obstacles appear, the brain asks, why are we doing this? And if there's no deep answer, quitting feels logical. Meaning is what makes discipline sustainable. It turns effort into expression. It turns consistency into identity. When you know why you're showing up, you don't need to negotiate with yourself every morning. You don't ask, do I feel like it? You ask, who do I need to be today? And here's something powerful. Meaning is not something you find. It's something you assign. Two people can do the exact same work and experience it completely differently. One feels drained, the other feels fulfilled. Same action, different meaning. One sees sacrifice, the other sees contribution. One sees obligation, the other sees purpose. Meaning changes everything without changing the circumstances. This is why saying the right things every morning matters so much. You are not just setting goals, you are setting context. You are reminding yourself what today stands for. When you say, what I do today matters, your brain listens. When you say, this effort is shaping who I become, resistance softens. When you say, I'm doing this for something bigger than comfort, strength shows up. Most people don't quit because they're incapable. They quit because they forget why they started. They get lost in the noise, the pressure, the opinions, the setbacks. Meaning brings you back to center. It reconnects you to your values when emotions try to pull you off course. And meaning doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be about changing the world. It can be about becoming someone your future self respects. It can be about keeping promises to yourself. It can be about showing your children what consistency looks like. It can be about proving to yourself that you don't quit when it gets uncomfortable. Meaning is personal, but it must be present. When meaning is clear, confidence grows. When meaning is clear, fear loses control. You may still feel fear, but it no longer decides your actions. Meaning becomes the louder voice. That's when people look at you and say, you're so driven, or you're so disciplined, or you're so confident. And what they don't see is that you're not driven by motivation. You're anchored by meaning. This is why the most powerful question you can ask yourself is not, how do I stay motivated? It's, what does this mean? What does this workout mean? What does this conversation mean? What does this decision mean? When you answer that question intentionally, you reclaim your power. And here's the final piece. Meaning is what turns pain into progress. Without meaning, pain feels pointless. With meaning, pain becomes temporary and purposeful. You stop asking life to be easy and start asking it to be meaningful. When you wake up each morning and remind yourself why today matters, you don't need motivation to move forward. Meaning will carry you. Let's talk about certainty, because this is the invisible force behind confidence, leadership, and momentum. Most people think certainty comes from results. They believe once things go their way, once they have proof, once the situation improves, then they'll feel certain. But that's backwards. Certainty is not the reward at the end of the journey. Certainty is the fuel at the beginning. And if you wait for the world to give it to you, you'll spend your life hesitating. Certainty is an internal state. It's not arrogance. It's not pretending you know how everything will turn out. It's a decision about who you are being, regardless of conditions. Life is uncertain by nature. There are no guarantees, no perfect timing, no moment where fear completely disappears. So if certainty depended on external stability, no one would ever move forward. The people who grow, lead, and create impact are not the ones with fewer doubts. They're the ones who learned how to narrate certainty from the inside out. Think about how you act when you feel certain. Your body changes, your posture opens, your voice steadies, your decisions become cleaner. You don't overthink every step. You don't ask for permission. You don't collapse at the first sign of resistance. Certainty doesn't remove challenges. It changes how you meet them. Now compare that to moments when you feel uncertain. You hesitate, you delay, you seek validation, you replay conversations in your head, you second-guess decisions that were fine in the first place. Same intelligence, same capability, different internal state. The difference is not skill, it's certainty. Most people are trying to build certainty externally. They look for reassurance, praise, approval, perfect plans. And those things might give a temporary boost, but they don't last. Because the moment circumstances shift, certainty collapses again. That's why confidence feels fragile for so many people. It's borrowed, not owned. Real certainty comes from internal commitments, from deciding who you are and how you show up before results arrive. When you say, I am someone who follows through, and you live that daily, certainty grows. When you say, I can handle whatever comes, and you prove it to yourself through action, certainty strengthens. It's built through evidence, but internal evidence, not external applause. Your morning words are powerful because they remind you of those commitments. They reconnect you to you. Our standards before the world test them. Without that reminder, it's easy to shrink. It's easy to play small. It's easy to wait. Certainty must be practiced, and practice happens daily. Here's something most people don't realize. The brain doesn't distinguish between certainty and truth. It responds to certainty. That's why people with very little knowledge but strong certainty can influence rooms, while people with deep knowledge but weak certainty stay silent. Certainty creates presence. Presence creates impact. This doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means choosing your response to it. You can say, I don't know exactly how this will work out, but I know who I am. That's certainty. You can say, this is uncomfortable, but I don't quit. That's certainty. You can say, I've handled hard things before, and I'll handle this too. That's certainty. It's not about predicting outcomes. It's about trusting yourself. And trust in yourself is built the same way identity is built, through repetition, through keeping small promises, through showing up when it's inconvenient. Every time you do what you said you would do, even in a small way, you send a signal to your nervous system, I can be relied on. That signal creates certainty. This is why confidence that's built on hype fades quickly. But confidence built on standards lasts. Standards are the rules you live by when no one is watching. And certainty grows when your actions align with your words. If you say powerful things in the morning, but live inconsistently during the day, certainty erodes. But if your words and actions match, certainty compounds. Most people don't lack ability, they lack self-trust. And self-trust doesn't come from thinking positive thoughts, it comes from evidence. Evidence that you can keep going when it's hard, evidence that you can adapt, evidence that you don't abandon yourself at the first obstacle. Certainty also changes how others respond to you. People feel it. They may not be able to explain it, but they sense it. Certainty creates leadership even without authority. It creates attraction without effort, not because you're louder, but because you're grounded. People trust those who trust themselves. This is why you must stop outsourcing certainty to circumstances. Stop saying, once this happens, I'll feel confident. Decide instead, no matter what happens, I will act with strength. That decision alone changes everything, because now your behavior is no longer conditional. And here's the paradox. When you generate certainty internally, results start to improve externally. Opportunities appear, conversations change, doors open, not magically, but logically. You're showing up differently, you're communicating differently, you're taking action sooner. Certainty creates momentum, and momentum attracts opportunity. So every morning, before the noise, before the opinions, before the doubts, remind yourself of what you know to be true about you. Not the story of your limitations, but the evidence of your strength. Certainty is not something you wait for, it's something you choose again and again until it becomes who you are. When certainty lives inside you, the world no longer decides how powerful you feel. Let's bring this all together, because this is where everything you've heard either becomes life-changing or just another good idea. Small daily declarations don't feel powerful in the moment. That's why most people dismiss them. They're looking for something dramatic, something intense, something that feels like transformation instantly. But life doesn't change in explosions. Life changes in accumulation. Quiet, consistent accumulation. And the words you speak to yourself every morning are doing more work than you realize. Think about how compound interest works. One small deposit doesn't look impressive. In fact, it almost feels pointless. But repeated daily over time, it creates exponential growth. Identity works the same way. Confidence works the same way. Discipline works the same way. You are not becoming who you are in one decision. You are becoming who you are in what you repeat when no one is watching. Most people underestimate small actions because they're impatient. They want proof before commitment. They want to feel different before they act differently. But the real shift happens when you reverse that pattern, when you act differently before you feel different, when you speak differently before you believe it fully, because belief is not the starting point. Repetition is. Your morning words are seeds. You don't plant a seed and dig it up the next day to see if it's working. You water it, you protect it, you give it time. But most people plant a powerful thought once, don't see immediate change, and abandon it. Then they wonder why nothing sticks. Consistency is what gives small words their power. Every time you say something intentionally in the morning, you are casting a vote for the person you're becoming. One vote won't change much, but daily votes create a landslide. Over time, the old identity loses influence. The old patterns weaken. The new version of you stops feeling forced and starts feeling natural. And the moment something feels natural, it becomes sustainable. This is why people suddenly look back and say, I don't know when it changed, but I'm different now. It didn't happen in a moment. It happened in a pattern. They didn't wake up one day confident. They woke up confident because they practiced confidence long enough for it to feel normal. Small declarations work because they bypass resistance. Big promises trigger fear. Small, consistent language slips past the nervous system and rewires it gently. You're not demanding perfection, you're establishing direction. And direction, over time, determines destination. Most people are living proof of this already, just in the wrong direction. Their current life is the result of small, repeated thoughts they never questioned. I'll do it later. That's just how I am. It doesn't really matter. None of those thoughts ruin their life in one day. But repeated over years, they shaped behavior. And behavior shaped outcomes. Now imagine using that same mechanism intentionally. Imagine repeating words that reinforce strength instead of doubt, progress instead of pressure, commitment instead of excuses. You don't need to shout them. You don't need to feel dramatic. You just need to be consistent. This is also why mornings matter so much. You're setting the tone before momentum builds, before the day pulls you in different directions, before other people's expectations creep into your head. When you choose your words first, you start the day in authorship instead of reaction, And here's something important. Small daily declarations don't just change how you feel, they change what you notice, they change what you tolerate, they change the standards you live by. Over time, you stop accepting behaviors that don't match who you've been telling yourself you are. You stop negotiating with old habits, not because you're forcing yourself, but because they no longer fit your identity. That's when change becomes effortless, not easy, but natural. Effortless because you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're aligned, your words, your focus, your meaning, your certainty are all pointing in the same direction, and alignment is where power lives. People often ask, what if I miss a day? You're human. Missing a day doesn't break the pattern. Quitting does. The danger isn't in consistency. The danger is giving up on the process because it doesn't feel dramatic enough. Transformation is quiet before it's visible. Over time, these small declarations stack on each other. Confidence builds, focus sharpens, meaning deepens, certainty stabilizes. And one day you realize you're no longer trying to change your life. You're living from a different place. So don't underestimate the words you speak tomorrow morning. They may feel small, but repeated daily, they become the architecture of your future. What you say every morning doesn't just shape your day, it shapes who you become.